Hello. Hi.
Ava's mission. Ava, at age 33, was working as an assistant to a CPA when she read an article in the Wall Street Journal that described my work with abductees. She called my office and said that she would like to be interviewed because she may be going through the same thing as the experiences described in the article, and it's important for a lot of people. In a follow-up telephone conversation, Ava told Pam Casey that she had been having feelings night and day of entities, dreams, of beings in her room that are still there when she wakes up, and recalled incidents from early childhood and late adolescence when she could not move as her vagina was probed by midgets who had somehow gotten into her room. Ava's unusual encounters made her wonder if she were crazy. She had always considered herself to be a very logical person, and these experiences contrasted with accepted notions of reality. Nevertheless, she intended to discover the truths that underlay her experiences, a determination that fit with her sense of herself as a pioneer with a global mission to help others. Until she read the article in the Wall Street Journal, Ava felt very much alone in the struggle with her encounters. The day before her telephone interview with Pam Casey, she wrote in her journal, "I'm trying to cope with it in my own way. It's hard. No one to talk to, no one to cry with, to ask for reassurance, for understanding. It's a heavy burden to carry alone. How can I help Sarah, her daughter? She's only 6. Although her abduction experiences were disturbing to her, Ava sensed from the beginning of our work that they were connected with some sort of purpose, and that she was a vehicle through which information from another, higher source might be transmitted. In January, February, and March 1993, we did 3 regressions. Ava was the oldest of 3 children, born in Israel. Her father is a banker and real estate investor whose work has required him to travel a great deal. The family lived in England, Venezuela, Florida, and New York as Ava was growing up. She married in 1980 and settled in the United States in 1985. As a child, Ava felt that her creativity was suppressed because of the necessity of deferring to the needs of her father, whom she still respects but describes as cold. "He's not a touching person," she told me when I inquired about the possibility of childhood sexual abuse. Ava grew up as a conscientious person with a strong sense of wanting to please others, if necessary, at the expense of her own freedom and imagination. Ava's husband, David, works as an electronic engineer for a large photographic corporation. Her marriage is somewhat traditional in that the care of the household and children falls mostly upon her, while David, as the principal breadwinner, works long hours at the company. Ava's personal agreement with herself, related to her acute sense of responsibility, included the requirement that no one would be hurt in the process of her personal evolution. She did not, therefore, tell her husband of her unusual experiences or her work with me until after our second regression in February 1993, 9 months after she first called my office. Her concern was not only that David would not understand her experiences, but also that he might be troubled by the information, which could create uncomfortable tension in their relationship. Ava and David have 2 children, Aaron, age 9, and Sarah. After our first regression in January 1993, Ava spoke of her concern that Sarah was having her own abduction-related experiences. About 3 or 4 times a year, she was waking up from bad dreams. For example, one night a month or 2 before this session, Sarah woke up in the middle of the night screaming for her mother. Ava went into her room, and Sarah said first that she had had a bad dream, but then she said that she had seen a ghost flying in the room that was all white, and he wanted to take me, and I didn't want to go. It was clear to Ava that Sarah was fully awake and fully energized by what had happened, though she did not talk about it the next morning. Ava does not believe that Aaron was having experiences, but he's into computers and spaceships, which he builds in the computer, and his imagination is so wild that if he would wake up in the middle of the night and tell me about a dream, I wouldn't know if it was real or not real. The first abduction experience that Ava recalls occurred when she was 4 or 5 and living in Israel. She shared a room with her baby sister, who seems to have slept through Ava's experience. Further details of this encounter will be reported in the account of the first regression. Before speaking with Pam Casey, Ava had written in her journal that she had started to read Whitley Strieber's Communion, but discontinued it so as not to be influenced by anyone or anything. Then something triggered my memory, and she recalled waking in the night and seeing 3 midgets, about 3 feet tall. They had dark brown, wrinkled skin and triangular heads. They stood by her bed and touched her genitals with what felt like fingers, probing, kind of experimenting, without force or a sense of sexual urgency or intensity. She felt helpless and could not move, and when she tried to scream, no sound came out, at least at first. In her journal, Eva wrote, "They walked through the space, about 1/4, between the wall, external wall, and the door, like walking through a wall, and disappeared just as my mom entered the room. I told her there were midgets in the room, that they just walked through the door. She looked. Obviously she saw nothing. Told me it was a dream and that I should go back to sleep. I was scared, didn't believe her. I was sure they were real. I saw them, heard them, felt them. The first time I remembered this was last night. I don't know what brought it on. I'm writing this now because I feel it, in my veins, as if it just happened, and I know it's true because I have goosebumps all over." About 10 days after our first meeting in October 1992, Ava wrote in her journal that she was driving to Boston, listening to the tape of her session, when she began to recall more details of this childhood abduction experience. As she listened to the part about trying to scream for her mother, I jumped on my car seat, and all of a sudden a picture flashed in front of me as a result of looking at the highway lights. I recalled a spaceship looking like this drawing in journal. It was huge, grey in colour, metallic. It was hovering close to me. And then I saw a face of a female with big eyes, round and dark, and green, like eyebrows, light green all around the eye area and coming almost to the edges drawing in journal. Then the picture disappeared. The recollection was brief, perhaps seconds, but very vivid with many details, including the lines, shape, and structure of the craft. Eva recalls another childhood incident when she was about 6 that she now relates to her abduction experiences. She had developed pneumonia and was taken to an emergency room in a hospital. The bright lights frightened her and triggered a memory of an abduction experience. In her journal entry of May 22, 1992, she wrote, "It's not like a single dentist's light. It's a few of them, above you, like small projectors, and you're on the bed, helpless, and strangers around you, touching, feeling, investigating, experimenting. Stop. No more." When the doctor in the hospital told her to lie down on a bed and take off her undershirt, she refused. Her mother urged her to, but she still would not lie down or take off her shirt. Although she screamed in terror, "They forced me. I absolutely hated it." In the altered state, Ava reported seeing a spaceship about a year later in the grassy area behind the apartment complex in England, where the family was living. It's very low, and it has like three things of fire coming out from the bottom. It's grey, and at the bottom there are what you would call windows, with light coming out. Ava believes, "They blocked my memory so I could not remember." "You remember absolutely nothing," she said. "Otherwise it interferes with your daily life." Ava believes that the aliens have a tracking mechanism and relates an experience when she was about 9 and still in England to a possible implant. She was doing somersaults on horizontal bars, missed one, fell, and bumped her head really hard. She says that she felt that something moved in her head, something they could keep track of me. I asked her if she could feel it move, how she knew. I just know, she said. They had their signal from this accident, and they came back and corrected it. Again I asked how she knew. I know, she said. 2 other incidents occurred when Ava was 19 while serving in the Israeli army. In one, which she recalled in greater detail in the first regression, she felt as if somebody has given me a shot, a gas mask, I don't know what, to knock me out. And as she was waking, she heard whispers in her room. She was alone in her parents' apartment at the time, and there was 1 female and 2 or 3 males around. I was frozen again, totally frozen, and felt something between my legs. I was very afraid, but at the same time I was trying to be logical and analyze the situation. She felt the female and the male standing over me. At the time, Ava did not think of this as something extraterrestrial. I thought it was robbers and waited for them to leave. When she was able to move again and looked around, there was nobody there. The other incident occurred while she was on the night shift in the air control. At a slow time, perhaps 3 in the morning, she put her head down to doze and then saw myself floating from the ceiling. My consciousness was up there. My physical body was down there. A voice said, "Come with me, it's good." And I knew at that point I had a choice of living or dying. Although her heart was beating fast and I was sweating like crazy, Ava was not aware of any life-threatening illness. She said, "I wasn't interested in dying," and I said, "No, I'm not coming." Ava knew she could have died, but does not understand why, and found the episode confusing. Ava had 2 experiences in the month before she read the Wall Street Journal article that probably sensitized her to its content. In the first incident, described in her journal entry of April 1415, she woke during the night and saw a violet rectangle, like a doorway into out of somewhere not visible, maybe another dimension. She saw then the upper parts of some people wearing white, and they were standing at the front of my bed. She blinked her eyes, thinking, "It's my imagination." But when I opened them again, they were still there. At some point I understood it's real. I felt as if they were bringing me back home, whatever that means. On May 6th, 8 days before she read the article, Ava wrote in her journal, "Last night when I went to bed, I wanted so to meet them. I asked, begged for an encounter. I volunteered myself, my body, for their examination so they can further their knowledge about us earthlings. I was just about to fall asleep when I felt a strange dizziness, a loss of gravity, as if I was swirling into a tornado, as if I was being sucked into somewhere. I knew I could stop it just by physically touching my husband beside me in bed. But I knew my wish was granted, and I didn't want it to stop. I suddenly saw a light blue light encompassing me. It was light blue, yet there was a white light inside the light blue one. It was a soothing light, yet one that I know would lead me to greater knowledge. It was magnetic. It was the feeling I got from it that is beyond words. Words are too physically limiting. When I saw the light, the dizziness twirling stopped. I went blank. I didn't sleep well, I know that much. I woke up 2-3 times that night, finding it difficult to fall asleep again. I was restless. When I woke up in the morning, I was so tired, as if I went on a journey all night long. I hope I did. And I wish that someday I will remember those journeys, and all about them, so I can use the knowledge to help mankind. The following morning, Ava's husband, who seemed to have slept through the incident, told her that he heard a big bang during the night. She felt full of energy and filled with love and hope. But at the same time she was frightened and wrote in the journal, "I felt I was really going crazy. I couldn't tell David. He'd think I was nuts. I was so scared, couldn't fall asleep, didn't know what to do. I have to get help. Somebody I could talk to. Now it's me and the pen and paper, but I need somebody humanly to hear me out. With no judgments, no expectations, no accusations. Somebody with explanations, maybe." She continued, asserting confidently that the beings mean us no harm, that they are here to help, and I love them. In the weeks before my first meeting with Ava in October 1992, she had several other powerful experiences involving the feeling of strange presences, or the conscious perception of unusual entities, including beings from a totally different dimension. During a hypnotic session with a dowser from another state who also did healing work, she found herself going back in time to 160 or 180 years ago and moving from one dimension to another, experiencing a difference in the energy vibrations and located in a different planet, star, galaxy. I don't know the name of it. In her journal entry of September 27th, which she wrote after returning from an energetic healing class, Ava explained that she was living two dimensions simultaneously. "I have the gut feeling." The journal entry continued, "I was in a higher dimension where linear time is irrelevant." After considerable difficulty in scheduling, Ava and I met for the first time on October 15th, 1992. In this interview, she provided much of the information recorded above and expressed the wish to explore her experiences further with hypnosis. "That's what I'm here for," she said. But again, there were problems of scheduling and postponements, so that our first regression did not occur until January 19th, 1993. But in the weeks before this session, things started to surface. In her journal entry of December 6th, Ava wrote of a powerful experience that had occurred the night before. "I was almost asleep, but not yet. I lay down on my stomach, my head to my left, my eyes were closed. At the tip of my eye I saw a grey spaceship. She drew the ship and symbols that she saw. I panicked. I wanted to scream. I couldn't." She felt that she could break out of the experience, but I got courageous and convinced myself to go on the ride, but trying to acquire as much info as possible for PK and JM. After this, she blacked out, and the next thing I remember was I was lying on a hard surface. Maybe two people in the room. I kept my eyes shut very firmly because I was so terrified to open them. I remember them, or me, I'm not sure which, wearing a dark grey garment robe with many buttons going down the back. I was in a fetal position, my back to them. They were doing something to my spine. My entire spine was stinging and cold. It was awful. It felt as if they were going inside my body with some very sharp instrument, syringe, and inserting it between my flesh and skin. The stinging sensation persisted. At one point I started moving, resisting the situation, although I was at the same time scared of the consequences of doing so. I tried to get at some point more data with my eyes closed. The air was moist. The surface I was on was hard and a bit slippery. I had the feeling the room was not well lighted, but then again, with eyes closed, I'm not sure. I continued to resist, and at some point understood that they agreed to bring the situation experiment to an end. Before blacking out again, I remember I saw this symbol draws it in red. This is not the first time I saw this. Next thing I remember is finding myself in bed, hearing my husband. I was in a fetal position. I went to sleep on my stomach. I felt in total panic again, something that didn't happen before. I wanted to wake him up and tell him I was taken somewhere. I also knew he'd never believe me. He'd think I was crazy. I thought maybe calling PC or JM didn't want to bother them. It was Sunday morning, 5:30 a.m. I was shaky the next day. Still am. I'm trying to relax, accept it, and somehow make sense out of it. She felt edgy for a couple days and tried to put it in the back of my mind. On December 22nd, Eva wrote in her journal of the reluctance she had had about writing down the details of the above incident, as writing would legitimize the entire occurrence, and I wasn't ready for that then. She developed cold or flu symptoms and wondered if these had been brought about by the abduction and being bare on top, and the injection of whatever it was, etc. The clothesless me and the injection of a foreign substance might have caused a reaction in me. P.S. Nobody in my family had a cold flu at the time. In our discussion of this incident 6 weeks later, Eva said that the intensity of the physical sensations she had experienced convinced her the incident was real. I felt the sensations. I felt it hurting. I felt it stinging. It was cold. Eva came for her first hypnosis or relaxation session on January 18, 1993. She felt anxious but curious. I love the unknown, she said, and we spoke of her determination to proceed despite the scheduling difficulties over the holidays. Before inducing the regression, we reviewed the childhood incident when the midgets had entered her room and the recent episode described above. In the altered state of consciousness, Eva spoke immediately of lying on something hard with something above me, like hieroglyphics. She felt scared and heard herself screaming. A figure in black and green came out of what looked like a grey elevator. It's cold in the room. He tells them to stop. They give me something, and I feel like I'm being sucked into a white light, and I don't see him anymore. It's morning. I'm a child in Israel. I don't remember anything, and I just hear my mother telling me to get up and go to school, to get dressed. I took Eva back to the nighttime experience itself. She reported seeing, when they're bringing me back, a grey, dome-shaped craft with red lights over the balcony of her fourth-floor apartment. The bottom of the craft seemed to be a circular rim that turned and emitted some sort of light or energy, and that's their transportation method. She saw 3 beings that appeared like midgets, with brown skin and all over wrinkled, wearing olive green and dark maroon suits with black belts. Their heads were hairless and pear-shaped, with very dark eyes, like a dead blue and mushed noses. One was shorter than the other 2, and they were looking at me. Although her mother regularly checked to make sure that all doors were locked at night, when Eva screamed for her, the beings disappeared as if through a crack in the door of her room. When Eva told her mother about the midgets and how they had gone through the door, her mother said, "What are you talking about? The door was locked, and it's a dream." Eva insisted she saw the beings going out, and her mother repeated, "It's a dream. Just go back to sleep." And I did. I wondered if Eva could recall the beginning of the experience. She said her father might have read or made up a bedtime story before she and her sister were left alone to sleep. The bed had a guardrail, so Eva would not fall out. She was awakened by a buzz and said that the beings, who were shorter than humans, first appeared standing by the guardrail, and then there were like searchlights in the room, which came from outside. The beings seemed to know who to come for because they keep coming. She felt afraid, even scared to call my mom, and shut her eyes and faced the wall in a fetal position, the best defensive position, to make it go away. She heard whispering, and the beings injected something that felt like a needle in her back to quiet her. This time, the first incident Eva could recall, she said she was flown from her bed in a horizontal position on what seemed like a canvas and wood stretcher. Then she was sucked into the darkness outside and into the bottom of the ship, in the light that was like a beam of special energy emanating from inside the rim at the bottom of the craft. Ava felt a mixture of terror and confusion as she saw her balcony and the building next door as if from outside the house. Once in the craft, Ava found herself in an examining room on a table with small people and lights around her. There were lots of green and red buttons. It would be comparable to computerized systems. But it was different. The little people in the ship reminded her of the dwarfs in Snow White and seemed lighter than the ones that had come into her room. One of the beings communicated to the others, not to Eva directly, in a voice that resembled more ours, that their purpose was only to experiment with me and to cause no harm. She was in shock and defenseless as the beings poked her legs, spine, neck, and brow with sharp things, as if they were trying to understand. She could see a silver instrument with a round tip that was inserted in her forehead. A white or yellow fluid dripped onto her nose. The beings seemed to Ava to be both excited and amused, because they kept communicating with each other animatedly. Perhaps they were being too intense, overdoing it, for the leader came in, communicated something, and slowly they stopped. He agreed with the original purpose, but it's like a teacher that walks out of the room and the kids in the classroom start to fool around and do their own thing. The return reversed the process of the abduction experience. Ava felt herself like on a slide coming down back to my bed. Once she was in the bed, they were standing by the bed guard making sure I was okay. Once Ava regained my physical movement, she screamed and they fled. After recalling this experience, Ava had the sense that it was not the first time. Although she could remember no details, she felt that something had happened when she was 2 or 3 years old. She feels certain that the beings are able to keep track of me, and recalled the incidents from age 9 described earlier, in which they seem to have corrected an implant that was dislodged during a fall. Ava has the sense that the memories of her childhood abduction experiences were blocked by the aliens. I asked Eva directly what the next encounter that came to mind was. She replied, "I was 19, in Israel, serving in the army, and I was sleeping. It was in the middle of the night in my parents' apartment, alone, and I woke up because I heard whispering noises, and I felt and heard like people walking into my bedroom and into the living room, and I thought maybe robbers or something, so I didn't move. Ava knew the windows were closed and the door locked, and if it opens it makes a shrieking sound. She could not move as she saw 3 beings standing there. They were whispering, and one of them went out of the room and the other came back, and they were touching me between my legs, and I did not understand it because I was not dreaming." In a panic now, Eva tried to scream, but no sound would come. She experienced what felt like fingers probing inside her vagina. It was not pleasurable. It was incomprehensible, Eva said. She thought perhaps it was her own fingers, but when she checked her hands, I felt them on the outside of my thighs. Ava does not know whether this experience occurred in the apartment or someplace else. Her eyes remained closed throughout, and although there was a lot of light that came through her closed lids, she thought perhaps it was early morning. The positions of her body she found confusing. When I was aware of what was happening, it was like I was on my side, but when it was happening, I was on my back. I don't know. After this experience ended, Ava forced herself to forget it, and until the period when she contacted me, did not connect it with her childhood experiences. She believes that she has had approximately 10 encounters since age 18, and that the beings are more interested in the human after, at the adult stage, not so much as a child. At this point in the session, Ava shifted from the direct reporting of her experiences to speaking of the motives of the aliens and the meaning of the abduction phenomenon, based on information she feels they have given to her. Their purpose is to live in unison, she said, not to take anything from us. They want to study us to see how they can communicate. There are different dimensions, worlds existing within worlds, she added, and to go from one to the next is like a roller coaster. You need to speed up the energy, and then you go to another dimension where the reality is different. In the transition from one reality to another, you feel like you're contracting and expanding at the same time. It's like you become, on the one hand, part of everything, and everything becomes part of you. But at the same time, you contract into an infinitesimal point. This, she said, is absurd because it's two conflicting ideas. But this absurdity contains the secret of moving from one dimension to the next. A shift in Eva's perspective occurred at this point, and for the remainder of the regression, she spoke as if from the perspective of the alien community, using only the pronoun we. It's like I'm not speaking, she said. The intensity of her experience in this realm was physically difficult for her and caused pain in the hands, she said, due to blocked energies. The aliens were gone, and she saw the frame of a white triangle. It's too intense, she said. They can cause damage to the human body. The beings emanate from different dimensions beyond physical, Eva observed, and they need somebody that's closer to the human being who is able to communicate somehow physically with them. The information they can relay, she said, is of such high intensity that they need something to slow it down. The encounters with human beings do just that, i.e., slow down the transmission of information. The information the alien beings bring, Eva said, comes from another intelligence, a realm beyond the physical world. But most people disregard it, dismissing it out of fear as crazy thoughts or just imagination. In order to be receptive to this information, it is necessary for human beings to be able to put aside their preoccupation with daily responsibilities like work, children, marriage, our customary unconsciousness. Nevertheless, Eva insisted, it is important for us to overcome our need for power and control on his plane and to acknowledge that life exists elsewhere, though not necessarily in physical form. One of the problems in reaching us, she said, is that human beings are anchored in the need for physical proof through the five senses, which we are trying to provide. This is difficult, for we don't consist of physical data. We are not in space-time. We don't have any form. We are all. You could say I or one. It does not matter. We are an offshoot of I, or what you would equal to God. Eva herself is a vehicle through which we can convey that information. As the regression ended, Eva thanked me for letting us be heard and felt afraid to open her eyes. After coming out of the hypnotic state, Eva said that the experience seemed authentic to her. It was me. I know it was me, she said, but it was another me. She spoke of the difficulty integrating the world opened to her by the encounters with her domestic life. What I'm going through now is alone, she said. Eva noted that she had not been open with her husband about the changes taking place. He just gets bits and pieces, she said. I invited her to share what she was going through in my monthly support group, which she appreciated and agreed to do. Then she talked about her daughter's recent experience with the ghost that was flying in her room. As the session was drawing to a close, Eva spoke of continuing numbness in her hands, but otherwise felt well. She described herself as a pioneer and a warrior who likes challenges. But at the same time she feels miserable with myself because I don't understand what's happening. She is reluctant to speak of the new information she is receiving out of fear that others will not understand. After the session, Eva had a brief intense headache, which soon subsided. She then felt well. She listened to the tape of the session and found that she was better able to accept the reality of her experiences than before the session. She especially appreciated that she had someone to talk with about her experiences who believes it's not make-believe. She felt full of energy, but wanted to be able to control it better. Writing in her journal 15 pages on one day was particularly helpful. Another regression was scheduled for February 22nd, a month after the first one, aimed at integrating the abduction experiences with her everyday life as a wife and mother. Before the regression began, Eva spoke of the difficulty dealing with all the garbage that's been accumulating, by which she meant the tension between her conservative daily life and the abduction-related intuitive expansion of her self-knowledge. In having a son and a daughter, Eva felt that she had completed a circle and was now ready to focus upon her global mission, particularly her role as a communicator between humanity and everything else. ETs, UFOs, call it what you will, higher intelligence. She spoke then of the suppression of her creativity and the need to please others growing up described earlier. Perhaps her mission is to be a healer, she speculated, enabling people to break away from the unhealthy effects of institutional systems. A few days before the meeting, Eva had a vision of a downward-pointing white and yellow light triangle, commonly a symbol of the feminine principle or Great Mother archetype, with circles, usually representing universality, totality, or wholeness, within it. Before beginning the regression, Eva spoke of her desire to remember more of her experiences, to open up in the service of her higher self, and to throw away the garbage. Again, Eva defined the difficulty she has navigating between what she called the world that defines reality for most people and the new realms of her experience. For me, both are real, she said. In the first minutes of the regression, Eva spoke rather abstractly about dimensions of reality, what it is possible to perceive and talk about, cosmic truth, and other such topics. But the bulk of the session concerned her profound struggle to integrate her daily personal and abduction-related lives, especially the problems of communicating openly with her husband. Her first image was of black circles surrounded by golden light, glowing like sunspots, and coming toward the earth. Some people perceive this, she said, but for others it would not exist. She described the object as energy that cannot be perceived by the five senses, but is real nevertheless. Such an object can be perceived by those who can attune to that range of communication, and it will be invisible to all the rest. To perceive beyond the physical range, people must want that communication, she said. Shifting to her we mode, Eva spoke of the difficulty of conveying information about these matters that lie outside of linear time and space. She seemed almost to be debating with me, as if I were a protagonist for a materialist philosophy. You either perceive it and it exists, or you don't perceive it and therefore it does not exist. The same thing here ed, with the black and golden circles. You are trying to perceive it in those certain limitations, but it's beyond it. It's like existing, and it's not existing at the same time, and you're trying to make us say, does it exist, or does it not exist? The debate continued around Eva's I, personal, and we, alien universal identities. The black golden object, Eva said, was dense, and inside it were different energies and colors, green, yellow, and red. The way I describe the object to you, she said, is as though it has an inside, and it has an outside, and it has boundaries, but it really doesn't. So it's hard for us to put her, Eva, inside or outside of it. These colors, Eva said, represent different frequencies or levels of energy, but red doesn't really exist, nor yellow, nor green, or any other colors. We continued a bit further in this vein, as Eva talked of information relating to cosmic truth, trust, communication through colors and vibrations, and more. But she soon came down to earth by observing that she suffers from an old habit of not believing in herself, and the difficulty of accepting the new aspects of herself that have been unfolding. She has a very rigid earthly doctrine, Eva noted. I encouraged her to tell me about that, and she said bluntly, I believe that number one, my responsibilities are to my family and to my kids, and all those mundane routine things. Number one, having fulfilled those, I believe that I'm free to do anything I please or to manifest anything I believe in as long as no one, and I underline and put it in bold, no one gets hurt in the process, physically, emotionally, or mentally. And if those two things are fulfilled, then everything else is okay. Now that's her doctrine. With the shape of Eva's dilemma now sharply defined, we were able to proceed with a deeper exploration of it. I said that her doctrine would not work at a cosmic level, that she would have difficulty navigating between her earthly responsibilities and higher self using such a rigid framework. She suggested that she might be superwoman, but I wondered if spiritual evolution could occur without pain, involving at times others that we love. The discussion continued in a somewhat argumentative vein for a while with considerable resistance. Dynamic tension, she called it. On Eva's part, denial of her struggle and reassertion of her personal agreement with herself. Not to hurt anyone, while at the same time restating the strength of her motivation to move ahead. I encouraged Eva to notice what she was feeling in her body. She said that was hard when you're a body and you're not a body, and that I was confusing her. I asked her to tell me again her husband's name, and she asked me why that was relevant and then noticed thumps in my head, like somebody with a hammer, and my heart's beating fast. More denial of hurt, confusion, and an objection to being distracted from more abstract considerations in order to consider her body followed. But Ava did admit challenges to be transcended into the next step. Then Ava acknowledged, she's sick, aching on the right side. It's Ava's ache. I feel it now. It doesn't hurt, but it's an ache. But she said, you created it. We went back to her agreement to not hurt anybody, and she admitted in rather convoluted language the problem of reconciling agreements reached outside of incarnation or linear space and time, with those that operate inside those limitations of space and time. The breakthrough in the session occurred when I asked Ava what cost her not talking with her husband and children about her experiences had for her global mission to which she had referred in our earlier session, and she replied, if it would be in dollars, you wouldn't be able to afford it. Then she added quickly, we're joking. She spoke then of her husband's vulnerability, especially in pursuing a business career. He is a great guy, but appears to have accepted the dominant earthly perspective and belief systems of this culture and is working in his job, and here is this wife of his, or he thinks it's his, as most men in your society do. It's a possession, that it's his wife having these grand travels, cosmic travels. How is that going to affect him? She asked. I acknowledged the sensitivity of the question and asked how fragmenting it was for her not to have told him of her experiences. Sometimes it's tearing her sick apart, Eva admitted, and spoke of how miserable she is in her job, but does not leave because of the financial situation. I encouraged Ava to speak from an I perspective, and wondered again at the sacrifices she was making in the service of her internal agreement. She objected to the word sacrifice, but acknowledged that something is not working. She spoke then of her plan to leave her job, knowing that this scares David, and reasserted her determination to help others. She will tell him, this is me, this is part of me, and this is what I love. And if you cannot accept it, that means you cannot accept me for what I am. She wants desperately to bring forth her creativity, she said, and must find a common ground compromise with David to be able to pursue her global mission. Ava spoke then of the tearful encounters she had had in the past when she had tried to convey to David her determination to follow her own path. To tell David of her alien encounters will, she anticipates, be the most difficult challenge of all. "It's like those sunspots at the beginning of the session," she said, "that gold ring. There's not such a definite border anymore." She has tried to hide her encounters in her own little bag, with a lock on it, where she keeps her journal and your tapings and all that stuff. But phone calls from our group were starting to come in, and she was gradually letting go of that secrecy. David knew, for example, that she started seeing a psychiatrist. So the borderline between what he is to know or what he is not to know is a matter of perception, and that borderline will diminish and fade. She intended to tell David briefly of her encounters. Not too much detail is necessary, just of their existence, and of higher communication and a general sense of the global mission, and that will be sufficient. I expressed doubt as to whether it would be so simple, and we discussed the tensions which lay ahead for Eva. Characteristically, she found this prospect interesting and challenging. As the relaxation session ended, Eva asked to be alone for 5 minutes. After this, she spoke of a children's book, written in Hebrew, called Soul Bird, which concerns a bird inside every human being that contains many compartments. A compartment for anger, a compartment for happiness, a compartment for jealousy, for love, for hate, and we're the only one that has a key to those compartments. And we decide which compartments we want to use at any time. Thinking a moment, Ava said, "So maybe I should open up more compartments." We spoke of timing, and then her thoughts returned to David. Perhaps in the service of her mission, she said, she might cause someone else pain. Perhaps it is what David wants. Maybe it's something that he's creating for himself, so he can transcend as a person to the next level. She was thinking about telling him the truth of her experiences more fully, with the idea that perhaps he can only change his consciousness with some sort of major challenge. As the session came to the end, we discussed the particular restrictions that the corporate environment places on the evolution of people's consciousness. Following this session, Eva again experienced an intense headache and was extremely thirsty for a day or two, which she associated to the releasing of energy and her opening to cosmic information. In a letter to me 2 weeks after the regression, she wrote of her attraction to the challenges of the consciously unknown. In journal notes, which began with entries 3 days after the session, she wrote of plans to go to Israel for the summer and of past life experiences, including an abduction experience as a 5 or 6-year-old boy in the 17th century, described in the account of our third hypnosis session, March 15th. She also described her sense of space-time collapse in relation to the encounters. Past and future are occurring now and forever. Her longing for global peace and understanding, and set down other philosophical and spiritual ruminations about the evolution of consciousness and cosmic truths, inspired by listening to the tape of the February 22nd session. Writing in the voice of her cosmic Weishe, Ava described the need of the beings to adjust our communication from higher vibratory levels to those of earthly, verbal vibration. To slow down in this way and vibrate at more subtle levels takes training. We are using Ava's body with her consent full time now. Earthly Ava has not left, but she has diffused with us so that her earthly powers have been greatly enhanced, so to speak. She warned of the limitation of using words to describe such profound experiences, especially the relation of the earth plane of existence to other realities. In the journal, she wrote of telling David about her experiences soon after our session. He didn't show much interest. Support in any form was non-existent. I wasn't surprised. Didn't expect otherwise. I'm not resentful. Totally accepting. My hypothesis, he's both in denial and hurt. Although David insinuated he is part of the game, Ava told me later that she is uncertain about whether his claims of involvement are genuine. He said they left a mark on his foot, that they are midgets, and he's seen them, but he didn't seem to show much interest. Whether he's an experiencer for real or not, time will tell. However, he said they should contact him. He's got much info to give. He also suggested that to get rid of the fear, I should teach them a game we could play together, and they can teach me one of their games. Interesting to note that from the following morning the fear subsided to almost zero, and the red spot on my nose appeared 2 days after that. It's like through a dream, except the suggestion was taken up by both sides and the fear worked itself out. Also, soon after the February session, Ava had a dream of burning houses, which she interpreted to represent the burning garbage that needed to be burned up in relation to other people. She also sent 2 journal entries from the previous summer. In one, she described being outside planet Earth and seeing a spaceship surrounded by a golden light. She was able to communicate telepathically with the entities on it and learned that she was much loved and that she would eventually be reunited with them. I was ageless yet a young soul. In the other entry, she described a past life as a teenager in the 1930s or during World War II. She saw a baby in her arms and believed that this experience explains her love for all children. In a note on March 9th that accompanied a gift of fruit and other food in commemoration of the Jewish redemptive holiday of Purim, Ava wrote, "Thanks to you and others, I am learning to regulate the energies more productively." We scheduled a 3rd relaxation session for March 15th. At the beginning of the session, Eva described how before a lecture at her energy and healing school, she went to take a nap, could not fall asleep, felt restless, listened to music, and then it started. She saw herself as a 5 or 6-year-old boy in the mountains somewhere in Europe. She lived with her father, a husky blonde-haired man in a log cabin. She described their clothing, including the detailed designs on their white aprons. We had something on our heads like a yarmulke, like a cap or something. Turning to the left, she saw a saucer, spaceship. A few minutes seemed to pass, and I was walking towards this spaceship, and my father then and there was frozen. I mean, he couldn't move, he couldn't speak. He was like, ice. As the boy, she saw one of the midgets again coming out. Next, she was in the ship, which took off as she looked down through the window at her father, who unfroze and looked up with tears in his eyes. It's like he understood. It's like he knew all along that physically I was given to him through conception, but that in another sense she was not his child. He just accepted what was going on. I remembered those midgets again, Eva continued, the same ones that I remember when I was 4, 5 years old. The eyes again were very dark, but I felt a lot of emotion in them, a lot of compassion, a lot of love. It's like we've come back for you, something like that, and then I remember a lavender color, and that's that. Somehow she felt the year was 1652. This experience further persuaded Ava that she was not from here, not earthly. The ETs, she said, have the ability to enter into our space and time dimension, or leave it any time they want. She related this ability to the 1652 experience. It's like I was brought to Earth. I don't know why I was brought for 6 or 5 years, or however old I was at the time, and then I was taken out to another dimension that has no space and time as we know it. Ava in this life feels she is an energy form, given a body to carry out a certain mission, which has to do with some sort of full experience of life in earthly terms. There followed further discussion of the difficulties of perception and communication between the alien or spirit cultures and earthly forms, and the choices that our souls make among the infinite probabilities from which we can choose, one of which is to become embodied on Earth in a particular time and place. Ava then reviewed her communications with David about her experiences. With him and others, she has been talking about such things where I would never think of it before. David seemed to be in a state of shock at the beginning, followed by big denial. Now he speaks somewhat sarcastically about your friends from the other side, who are this, that, or the other. Eva described further abduction-related experiences, with different procedures, surgeries, call it what you will, to remove energy blocks. She says she has discovered blue and red spots on her hand, breast, and other places on her body that have not gone away. Ava hoped to learn more about the 1652 material under hypnosis, and I cautioned about trying to target specific experiences. Deep inside, she suggested, perhaps we know where we're going to go already before we come here. She suggested that the ETs themselves, that we physically see, are just a form they take when they enter this dimension. Wherever they come from, she said, they don't live physically per se that way. Their souls can manifest in different forms. That's why we get different pictures of the beings, she said. Some people call it reds, greys, browns, with wrinkles, without wrinkles, whatever. It's a combination of their biochemical energetic makeup and our perceptive devices. But there will be some common ground, she added. Eva's first image in the session itself was of being a 4 or 5-year-old girl swimming with dolphins that were her friends inside a cave. Some force pulled her out of the water, but the dolphins will wait. The little girl was drawn from the memory of the source of her being into a domain of growing up and responsibility. This loss of memory is necessary, she said, because in the physical world, if the memory of the source would be there would be no initiative to experience, so all would just lay back. I took her back to the little girl's experience in the cave. She keeps coming back, incarnated for a mission, Eva said. Becoming quite abstract, she continued, the energy makeup of the little girl will change with experience. Her energy will become more subtle and higher until, from a certain perspective, you can say there is no energy vibration. It's all one and the process begins again. Abductees, Ava said, are souls that have, for their individual purposes and reasons, chosen the probability of physical form. But through their experiences, they are regaining their memory of source. The process of abduction is one form of such, of regaining of memory. The abduction experience itself, Ava said, is a mechanism to remove the structures that impede the reconnection with source, and to purify the physical vehicle in such a way to serve to regain better memory and to bring knowledge to others. The physical and emotional torture of the abductions themselves, she said, is part of a balancing process. She herself never really feared, and if there was fear, it was more due to not being able to understand what was going on. Not fear as something horrible and dark and evil and unknown. In a way, the process always felt familiar. I asked Ava what she meant by familiar. The abduction experiences felt familiar. It felt home. It's never felt unknown, she said. I asked how far back her memory of abduction experiences went. She remarked about past lives in World War I and II, and in Morocco long before that. Her drive in each instance was to help mankind overcome blindness. I asked about Morocco. She said she had been a rich merchant named Omrishi in the early 13th century, who was trying to undermine corrupt officials of the hereditary ruling family that dominated the local government of the village. Rishi was well known because of his wealth and his reformist ideas and ideals. He organized militia groups to obtain greater economic equality for the villagers and sought to infiltrate the local government with his supporters. Part of his plan was to create chaos within the village that would make it easier to overthrow the ruling family and cause its members to flee. But he was betrayed by a woman who overheard one of his plotting conversations and reported this to the officials. She described how men on horseback, dressed in black with white headdresses, the bodyguards of the ruling family, came to Rishi's tent to arrest him. The women around him cried and the children hid, for they knew what was going to happen. He was taken to a white stone building, which smelled foul from people puking and urinating there. Rishi was to be beheaded, and the people were told to gather in the center of the village to watch the execution, for they wanted to deepen the fear in them. After his arrest, Rishi was taken from his cell to see where the beheading would take place. The following morning at 10 o'clock, they took me, they got my head on the thing, and plop. The feeling was one of relief. In addition, by understanding through experience, souls can return from time to physical form to help those who have not yet remembered. Rishi, for example, had planted a seed within people's hearts, and through earthly time the seed will sprout into a tree, and the tree will bear its fruit. I asked Ava about the role of abduction experiences in this process. To clean the body, physical body, in order for more information to come through, she replied. They, the aliens, have always been here. It's a matter of evolution, if we are able to perceive them, she said. There's times in the evolutionary process of mankind when they were around, but we were not able. It was not right. The time was not right for us to perceive them. Rishi perceived them not as coming in spaceships, but through higher communication and meditation through which he received guidance. All people have guidance, Ava said, but most don't listen to it. Abductees are at the level where they are able to cleanse, to bring information through. Abductions are very real, physically speaking, Ava said, but people should not emphasize that aspect too much. They should balance the data to comprehend it as a whole and not try to prove that they exist or do they not exist. The focus should be on the information given by abductees. That information should be gathered and developed on the physical plane to be of use. Time is wasted trying to prove or disprove the existence. Ava spoke of my own extremes of intellect and unconditional love, a cosmic tension, and advised me to go to a retreat in an isolated place without other people in order to balance these polarities and connect your being to the cosmos. Picking up emotions of sadness and loneliness in me, she said, "You need to know that you are never alone. Just ask for the connection and you'll feel us, i.e., all of the non-physical beings that have been guiding you all along." For Ava, this session was the most powerful of all. Its impact, she told me 2 months later, was totally beyond words to describe. She felt very much at home with what came up in it, like the actor and movie seer at the same time. She saw her life as Rishi as part of the evolution of her pioneering role in bringing about peaceful change toward harmony between people. She doubts that Rishi, from his 13th century perspective, was consciously aware, of the bigger picture. He was simply seeking to do something for his people in that place. He began a communication, but the larger objective of bringing peace and equality to people remained for the future. Discussion. It seems to me that Ava is a pioneer with a global mission of healing and peace. Her lifelong abduction experiences are a powerful vehicle for the evolution of her consciousness, and they bring her in touch with the depths of her purpose. She experiences the abduction encounters as important sources of information, emanating from dimensions beyond or outside of physical reality. She feels herself to be an energy form given a body to carry out a certain mission. Like most abductees, Ava has had disturbing, even terrifying encounters with alien beings. But her determination to give herself to the process, to surrender the need to control and resist its intensity and meaning, has enabled Ava to move beyond fear and trauma to a place of greater inner balance and personal power. It is characteristic of her to write in her journal following an abduction experience that left her feeling very tired that she hoped she had been taken on a journey. In Ava's descriptions of her abduction experiences, there emerges a consistent picture of the evolutionary purpose of the alien-human relationship, at least as it affects our consciousness. She repeatedly describes the access she gains during her abduction experiences to another dimension or other dimensions of existence, an expanded reality in which human concepts of space and time do not apply. This realm abounds in paradox, with the sense, for example, of expanding to infinity and contracting to a single point at the same time. Although Ava is quite articulate, she finds her words fail to convey the ineffable beauty and power of this spiritual realm. Abductees, she says, are souls that have chosen the probability of physical form, and the abduction experiences are a vehicle for regaining memory of the source of being, from which, at least in our culture, we have been largely cut off. Ava herself, like many abductees, seems to exist in both embodied human and alien form. During our sessions, when she would move deeply into her abduction experiences, the alien or other identity would take over. Then she would speak from the perspective of a kind of cosmic we or us that seemed to be in touch with the possibilities of a higher consciousness which could translate into peace and harmony on the earth plane. Essential to this expansion of consciousness is the breakdown of boundaries, the overcoming of separation of human selves from one another and from the entities, including the aliens themselves, that populate the spirit realms. From her other perspective, Ava is aware of the higher or more intense energy levels on which the alien beings exist, and the complex problem of adjusting their intensity downward in order to manifest on the earth plane. Ava senses that even the physical forms that abduction phenomena can feature humanoid beings, spaceships, travel of our bodies through walls, may represent adaptations of higher energy forms to the perceptual requirements of restricted human consciousness, a technology for reaching us in a language we can understand. It would appear the aliens, or the source from which they emanate, must create physical forms for us to know them. Ava's access to past life experiences seems to be part of the process of the expansion of her consciousness beyond a purely physicalist or materialist perception of reality. In this area, the alien beings appear to function as spirit energies or guides, serving the evolution of consciousness and identity. The thread of her personal mission can be detected in the past life experiences that she has related to me. For example, as Rishi, a well-to-do Moroccan merchant in the 13th century, she seems concerned with justice and equality, though on a more local scale, and as a small boy in the 17th century, she describes discovering that her soul does not belong to her earthly parents, but to a larger realm of being. For Eva, the integration of her personal evolution, as experienced through the abduction encounters, with her domestic responsibilities, has been a formidable task and an important aspect of our work. Her agreement with herself never to hurt anyone ran head-on into the inevitable tension that arose between her spiritual life and her relationship with her husband, who was embedded in the conservative and practical demands of the business world. Ava had sought to keep these lives totally separate, but found the fragmentation of her sense of self increasingly intolerable. A storybook from her childhood called Soulbird, that told of the compartments of feeling each of us carries within, seemed to capture the struggle to achieve inner peace that Ava was undergoing.